In this tutorial, we will create a payment session. The purpose of the payment session is to verify the identity of the cardholder, to prevent fraudulent transactions and refunds. The payment session reference is used when calling our web SDK's payment functions from your client side. This tutorial is for your backend server. To create the payment session, we will be making a request to Judopay's transaction API. The payment session reference, returned from the API, should be stored in your backend server, where it is ready to be used when calling our web SDK's payment functions from your client side. In this tutorial, we will be using PHP as our server-side scripting language. You may use any server-side language you wish, as we have a REST API, which responds with JSON. To make a request to Judopay's transaction API, we first need to define the request headers, the environment server URL, the request endpoint, and the request body. Define an array of headers, which includes content type, authorization, and the API version. For authorization, set this as basic, and then the base 64 encoding of your API token, then your API secret. For the API version, ensure this is set to the most recent version, which can be found in our documentation. To check the latest API version, visit Judopay's transaction API reference documentation. Define the endpoint /payment session. Define the Judopay API server URL, depending on the environment, where API-sandbox.judopay is for the sandbox environment, and API.judopay is for the live environment. Add the endpoint to the end of the Judopay API URL. Define an array which includes your Judo ID, the transaction amount, the transaction currency, a payment reference, and a consumer reference. Convert the format of this array to JSON. This will be used as the request body. Please note, all the values used here must also be used later when calling other web SDK functions, such as invoke payment. If any of these values are different, your transaction will fail with an error. Judopay's transaction API reference documentation contains the full schema details and descriptions on the fields that can be included in the payment session request body. Ensure you include the mandatory fields. In our previous code example, we used basic schema to give you an overview of what is needed. For example, you can set a payment session expiry date, which sets the expiration of the session created. This can be set to whatever you wish, within 1 year, depending on the nature of the transaction. If this is not set, it will default to expire in 30 minutes. Please note, we advise you to always use 3D Secure 2 for your transactions, to optimize your payment success rates. Now we pull together everything we have defined to make a POST request to Judopay's transaction API payment session endpoint. If the request is successful, you should receive an object containing a reference and the reference expiry date. If unsuccessful, you should receive an error response from the API. This is an object containing an error message, along with further details about the error. Judopay's transaction API reference documentation also contains information on the expected responses from the API calls. If the request was successful, extract the reference value from the response object. Store the payment session reference in your backend server. This payment session reference will be used later to populate the payment session parameter when calling the web SDK's payment functions. If the request was not successful, handle the API error accordingly. For more information on the format of the API error responses, head to our Web SDK documentation and see the section Web SDK Error Responses. Here it describes the fields that make up the API error response object.